everybody out there in Cryptid Land. I want you to please like and subscribe the channel. And if you want to talk to me, you want to get on the show, you know anybody that wants to come on the show, tell them to PM me on Facebook at Cryptid Quest, or you can send me an email at thecryptidquestpodcast@gmail.com. So, thank you for doing that. If you do it, now for the best. Me and my buddy Dirty over here have Sean Forker coming on. A hero of mine. I love him to death. And man, oh man, he had a scary, scary Sasquatch story. We talk about some really cool, interesting stuff too. So join us tonight on the
Cryptid Quest Podcast.
Hey everybody out there in Cryptid Land. We have a very, very special guest. I've been trying to get him on here for a long time. He is somebody that I kind of idolize and am dying to interview. So let me introduce Mr. Sean the Fork Chop Forker from Sasquatch Experience, one of my favorite podcasts.
Oh, Patrick, thanks for having me, my friend. Gotta love the horn.
Yeah.
Right there. Love that.
Yeah.
But thank you for having me. I'm glad we could finally make this happen. It's been a difficult, the end of last year was very difficult, man. But, I'm feeling pretty great now. Got things going. I'm just now getting over a stomach bug. So.
Oh, no. Well, I'm glad we're a long ways away from each other.
Right. I don't want to get anybody sick. I don't get sick. That's the thing. So when I get sick, it's a big deal. And this one kind of just took the tarnation right out of me. So I'm just glad to be doing something that's not lying down. And I've had enough television now. I can't watch anymore for a little bit.
I got you. So, Sean, so my podcast is, I would say, different than yours. I really love listening to your podcast because you guys are straightforward, to the facts, no nonsense, and I dig that because sometimes you need a balance on these things. And with mine, I tend to I'll listen to anybody, any story, and I'm not about ready to call anybody a fibber or this or that because I don't know what they've experienced. Is your mindset is pretty much that Bigfoot is flesh and blood and nothing more, or has it changed over the years?
So that's a fantastic question, Patrick, and I wish I could give you a true blue answer on that because my question, the answer to that is simply going to be I don't know.
Correct.
There's what I want it to be, and where I'm comfortable it being is resting within the realm of flesh and blood. I mean, if at anything, at some point in time, this thing, whether it's a physical or to some folks a non-physical being, manifests itself in a physical manner and leaves evidence. It leaves footprints, it leaves hair, it leaves scat, it leaves blood. Like we know it leaves physical traces behind it. Therefore, safely I could say at some point in its manifestation, it's a physical being. There are a lot of reports out there that give attributions to this thing that aren't normal. Mm-hmm. Now, like you said, where do we put those folks? Like that you'll listen to anybody, and so will I, because honestly, at the end of the day, I wasn't there to experience what they experienced. There's common sense and logical deduction, but at the same time, we only know what we know. And anything outside that realm is entirely up for conjecture and entirely up for it can be proven eventually. We just don't have that we don't have that technology or that formula to prove that yet, right? So that's a long-winded way of saying I think that this is a flesh and blood creature. Everything that I've seen and investigated have pointed me to that direction. But as I say all the time, it doesn't mean I'm right. It just is where the evidence has led me. And it's led other people to other things. What I've learned over the years is to respect the other mindset And I'll respect it as long as it stays respectful, tasteful, and just isn't somebody lying. Because people do lie.
Oh,
That's
100%.
just the reality of it, right?
Yeah.
And everybody always says, well, why would somebody lie about something stupid like a Bigfoot? Well, plain and simple, somebody's going to pay attention to them.
Exactly. Attention.
Especially now. There are a lot more people involved in this than when I started, and there were a lot fewer people involved in it before I started. But now, when you have Bigfoot being such a pop culture, not just Bigfoot, but cryptids in general, you have having this renaissance of interest to people. It's kind of like I just had this argument with my son about Dungeons and Dragons, and he hates Stranger Things, and I was like, well, you should appreciate Stranger Things because that brought Dungeons and Dragons back as a popular thing. Well, it was always no, it wasn't. I can tell you as somebody who grew up to that time, if you used to tell people you played Dungeons and Dragons, you got wedgies and we beat you up. It's just not something you did. So this renaissance in pop culture has made these things cool, because looking for Bigfoot in the early 2000s and the late 90s, you weren't cool, man. You were a target for, being made a fool of. And now that people realize people are interested in it, yeah, people will come out of the woodwork and make stories, if anything, just to get the attention from it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I love the way you answered that, and you can let your son know I'm a closet D&D player. So, but don't tell anybody that.
He's a player. He got bent out of shape because they broke the rules, I guess, at the last meetup they went to. And I don't know, kids. He's 18, so he's an adult now. I guess he's not a kid anymore, but he's still a kid to me.
Yeah.
And you got men arguing about rules of Dungeons and Dragons. It's almost as bad as people fighting about fantasy football.
Oh, so actually, something you said just a minute ago. It was a question I was going to ask you further down the line, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask you now. So obviously, there's a lot of cryptids out there that seem to be popping up everywhere. I mean, I'm getting all kinds of strange encounters. And some of them, to me, don't make sense. But once again, I wasn't there to observe it. Do you think there are any cryptids out there that are currently on the radar, or maybe not on the radar, that you think have a possibility of being real besides Bigfoot?
I really do. We go something simple as the Tasmanian tiger, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's still kind of a cryptid. I think we're getting closer to that. Let's also think of the giant squid was a cryptid for the longest time, and we've proven that now. We've caught one in a net. I use we as collective humanity, not myself. I didn't collect anything, but
yeah.
So, Loch Ness is getting harder and harder for me to believe in over the years, only because so many people have tried. But again, there's so much of it we haven't gotten to and explored. And, they talk about underwater cave systems and underwater rivers and so on and so forth. Can you really be sure there never really was one? But you got things like Ogopogo, and we now know that there's sturgeons that can get up to incredible lengths.
Mm-hmm.
So why not? Why could there not be other animals out there? I think 95% of the ocean is still unexplored.
100%. I mean, well, not 100%, but 100%, 95%.
100% of the 95%, right? Yeah, so that's a huge, huge number considering how much of our planet's actually covered in water.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really do think that there's cryptids out there, and I think the most fascinating discoveries are ones that we haven't even contemplated yet. I would love to be, if I didn't have such a fear of water, I don't like to be in water over my head.
Me either.
And I don't swim great. But if I had that urge, underwater, man, that's where the true mysteries are. And there's some pretty awesome things that are going to come out from our aquatic realms. And then I also realize there's parts of the world we still haven't explored yet very deeply. And so I don't know. You look at the globe. Look at the United States. How much of the United States is actually uninhabited?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And what lives out there that we really don't know? We're really arrogant as a species. Humanity thinks we know everything, and we know crap. And we just found another species of shrew not long ago. I just read that online, which is, a small mammal, but it's still a new mammal, a new species of creature that exists. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, they discovered the billy ape. They
Yeah,
finally got
Billy
proof
Ape.
that was real. And that was stories from villagers that
Yeah.
were seeing this thing. So yeah, there's still wonders out there, man. And I still think that we have cryptids for days we haven't even
Yeah.
thought about yet
So
that are out there.
you brought up the villagers talking about the Billy Ape. I did an interview with Dejo Thomas on my last episode, and
Okay.
He's come up with some interesting cryptids over in India, and one. Man, you're gonna have to forgive me because them names are so hard to pronounce. But one was basically like a vampire kangaroo. He called it the Indian chupacabra.
Okay.
And the other one, it reminded me, I can't pronounce the name. And I'm sorry, Dejo. Sorry. I'm apologizing to him right now. But it was the size of a tiger. It had the stripes on it that looked like the Tasmanian tiger. It had the face of either, they said, in between like a lion and a dog, and it couldn't retract its claws. And he started investigating this because of the people that in the villages that were saying, "Hey, we're seeing this thing." So yeah, there's gotta be other things out there that we just
Right.
don't know about.
What's interesting about that is, again, sophisticated white people, we like to think we know everything, right? And we don't listen to villagers. And how long did they talk about mountain gorillas before they
Exactly.
proved gorillas exist? And so we go on and on and on with all these examples. By the way, big primates, not small
Yeah.
shrews, big primates. And why do we think now we still can't discover? And you got to remember, I think the remarkable thing about, I think, Bigfoot is, I was interviewing with Billy Willard the other week on Sasquatch Watch Radio.
Yeah.
And I was
That's
on
the
there,
one I listened to you on. 'Cause I've
and
been
I was
on
with
the
the
show
guys.
too.
He's a good. I love Billy. I've
Yeah,
known
he's
Billy
great.
for a long time. You should talk to him, Patrick. He's a good dude.
I did. I was on his show.
Oh, how the hell did I miss that?
I don't
Anyhow, here we go, digressing, because I've been bad. And we were talking about the a level of intelligence that we attribute to these things, and I'm not saying Bigfoot's out there doing advanced physics and that it is intelligent. What I'm saying is it has a way of evading and eluding us, and it has awesome powers of perception. I think it's a very perceptive creature. And I honestly feel anytime we've had interactions with one have either because they've wanted the interaction or because one made a mistake.
Yeah.
It's not because we found it or we did anything special. It's because it either allowed it to be found or we stumbled upon it accidentally. And
Yeah.
that's a different type of intelligence. I really think that they have just a way of evading us.
I completely agree because I've had one encounter, but it took place in the woods that I've ran around in my entire life. I've never seen hide nor hair, no sound or anything. And then all of a sudden one night, boom, it's like, but it came in on me. I didn't go find it. And so there has to be like a deep intelligence there for them to be able to avoid us when they want to avoid us. But then again, I guess just like humans and everything else in the world, mistakes happen. And
Right. And
go ahead.
And come on, Patrick, we've all met people that aren't very bright.
Yeah. Well, here's one.
Don't be mean to yourself. You're a good dude. You're a really good dude.
So, all right, I want to know, and I think I already know this, but for anybody that's listening that hasn't had the pleasure of listening to your show or any other interviews, what got you into this? I know you're quite young, but
yeah, I was a kid, man. I grew up around this stuff. I was fortunate that my dad, my grandfather, my uncles, they all liked the weird and the unexplained. And so I grew up in a house where like Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, In Search Of, with the Leonard Nimoy In Search Of.
Heck yeah.
Unsolved Mysteries, like these things were on all the time. And if there was anything like paranormal, that it was on in my house. And it's my dad still has a great affinity for it. Same as my uncle, same as my grandfather. Grandfather, God love him, still alive. And he loves the fact I'm into this stuff. And my grandfather always kept books around, like little quick readers or whatnot of stories of strange creatures from the Amazon. And like one of the first things I became exposed to was that picture of Deloy's ape.
Yeah.
The one on the crate. I actually have it back on the wall. Regardless if that was a hoax or not, it was still cool. And when you're a kid, you're like, what the hell is that? That thing's weird. And so on a family trip to my uncle's house in Virginia Beach, when he lived out there in Virginia, he was in the Air Force. I liked to talk as a kid, and sometimes I'd get in trouble because I talked too much. It drove my dad nuts. So he stopped and got a book and the book he happened to pick up was Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us. And he gave me that book. And on that trip, Patrick, I don't remember anything about that trip, but reading that book. I love that book. And up until that point, I always thought Bigfoot was like a Washington Pacific Northwest thing. But then as you're reading through that book, and like even as a kid, 8, 9 years old, you're like, wow, Eastern Action, that chapter, Eastern Action, Bigfoot's in my backyard. It's in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Holy crap. And that opened a whole new world to me. So you fast forward a few years later, probably 6, 7 years later, I'm 15, 16 years old. I'm starting to go online to the internet, which was not safe then, but safer than it is now, and started talking to people like Henry Franzoni and folks on the virtual internet Bigfoot conference and all the different Yahoo groups. So I was a young kid talking to some of these people today that are like luminaries in the field or are now passed on. And I really wanted to know because I was really interested in it. Not a stupid, silly kid fascination. Like I really wanted to be a part of this. Like I wanted to go out and investigate because there was something about it that was real to me. And I've always found that to be the case, that to this day, I still hold a very firm conviction that all these people can't be seeing nothing. Like they can't be having a mass hallucination. They're seeing something. And then as I've gotten further and further into this, when you start talking about the quality of people that have had sightings, doctors, lawyers, judges, people that work for Fish and Game, you're fine. People, especially people that work in the wilderness, that should know the creatures that inhabit it, and they have a sighting with something they can't explain. Come on. Yeah. You can't tell me that's fake. And so all those years I met up with Eric Altman and the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society in the early 2000s, went out and started investigating things. I'm like 19, 20 years old. I'm a young kid still going out there. And I just realized I had a passion for this. And then the podcasting, actually, before it was a craze, we started doing Sasquatch Experience in 2006. We started having internet chats through Yahoo Messenger in 2005. So when you see Henry and I say we started Sasquatch Experience in 2005, that was really just our chat rooms. Yeah. That's where people came together to talk. But in 2006, with Blog Talk Radio, Steve Coles introduced us to that, the Squatch Detective. And we were the second Bigfoot podcast on that platform.
Wow.
And so so 2006, we're here at 2025, almost 20 years we've been doing the podcasting on this. And I've stayed an active field investigator all that time. And up until 2012, I never really had a sighting of my own until then. So all those years, I had a couple of experiences here and there that were questionable, but it took me all that time to have an experience of my own. And then when I had that experience, I almost gave it up. I didn't want to do this anymore.
Well, that's terrible.
So then I felt that I needed to come back into it and stay the course and investigate. And my resolve has never been stronger. And I've stayed pretty active and invest, especially in investigations since then. You don't see me going to conferences and doing lectures and stuff. That's not me, man. Like I'll do it if I'm asked. I do them very sparingly. Folks seem to enjoy it. I don't know, but I would rather be talking with folks like you, or being out there and sitting shoulder to shoulder and with someone in the audience, listening to them, listen to somebody talk.
Yeah.
Because it never fails that something somebody is saying sparks something in somebody listening. And then if you're sitting next to them, all of a sudden they want to start telling you a story, or what do you think about that? Like, so it's really neat. It's a great experience, and I love it. I love people. That's probably the whole point. I'm stuck in this. I love people.
Yeah. No, that's so awesome. That's so awesome. Hey, by the way, tell everybody else on your crew I said hi, even though they don't know me.
I will.
I listen to them all the time. I love everybody on your show.
Look, we have a big crew.
Yeah, you do.
And
great crew
to
too.
manage, we got Vance from Chicago, Henry from Mississippi, who Henry is the walking encyclopedia on Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Like Daniel Perez might be the only person that can rival him in knowledge. Maybe Steven Stroifer.
Daniel Perez took down my story.
Yeah, I love Daniel Perez. He's awesome. A good dude. Matt Arner, who's my research partner up here in Pennsylvania.
He's smart.
James Baker, who's a smart ass. Yeah. He's my buddy, and he's been doing this since Baker's been doing this since 2007. Very skeptical, but he enjoys the experience of talking to people and learn. And he goes to all the conferences with me, and he gets to talk to all the people we do. So that's 4 co-hosts plus myself. That's a lot of people to try to cram into an hour.
It is
to get a conversation.
Man, you guys do a good job with it, though. You really do.
Try. Thank you. We try. I mean, it's definitely, like you said, we do have a no nonsense approach to it, but it's not to be antagonizing, and it's not to be like we're trying to poke fun at the subject or poke fun at people. Like, we all take it very seriously.
Oh yeah,
and we enjoy the subject a lot, and a lot of us go out and spend time in the field. So when we have an area, like what we want to capture is that conversation that you're having with your buddies about certain topics for a listenership.
Yeah. You guys, and that's it. It's kind of like you guys are sitting around a campfire drinking a beer, just talking about this or that, whatever the subject is for the night. And I think that's one of the things I dig about your show. And and you don't beat up on people,
No.
But you try to keep it real, which I like that. I like that because, like you said,
you have to.
Yeah,
you have to. I mean, this world now, people like to use the term Bigfoot community, and Patrick, it's not a community.
No,
anymore.
It's not.
It's really not. And folks can be incredibly mean and incredibly judgmental. And I think sometimes we can be mean and judgmental too. I don't think we do it on purpose. It's just that, people need to brush up on their history and learn about the culture of Bigfooting, the story of Bigfooting, learn the players and read the material that's out there before they start coming at people with these theories that have already been debunked like 20 years ago, or these videos that pop up that everybody get excited about. Well, listen, we debunked that 30 years ago. Like, those are the things that frustrate me. And people that come and they revise history whenever they want to, like, all of a sudden, I can't tell you, and I'm sorry if this is going to upset anybody who's listening, all these people that have been looking for Bigfoot for 30 or 40 years that, 20, 30 years ago, I never heard of you. And you can go back and find where I've put my presence on this field, but nobody's ever heard of you. And don't put a number behind your name to give yourself credentials. Like, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't put the work in. To me, that's almost like plagiarism. Like, you didn't do that. Be honest about it. And, we'll be fine. Like, there have been people in this a lot longer than me, Patrick, that know a hell of a lot more than I do. But you know them because they're in the material. They're referenced in the material now. And that's not the end all be all, because you and I both know there's no experts in this field.
Oh, 100%.
Now, one person is an expert. But when you do something like that, you disrespect the people that have put in the tenure, that have been in this investigation, and it's just a little disrespectful. And to me, I just don't like that. So all of a sudden we had that influx of people that have been doing this for 30, 40 years that nobody's ever heard of, but they've been around, and, good on them, I guess. But think at some point we would have heard about you. Because
Yeah.
it was a much smaller field back then, man. It was much smaller.
Yeah. Well,
But that's an example of what we do on the show. Like what just happened right there.
yeah.
It's a perfect example of what happens on Sasquatch
Oh, I know. I was
Experience.
loving it. I felt like I was on your show for a minute.
I get fired up sometimes. I'm
I
sorry.
like
I
it.
get fired up.
I like the fired up forker. So,
Yeah, sometimes it's a hit or miss.
yeah. So what kind of encounters have you had? Have you had any that made you just crap your pants? I've heard of a few of them, but I
Yeah.
don't know who's heard. So why don't you
Right.
tell us?
So there's a part of Pennsylvania called Keystone State Forest. It's one of the first expeditions I went in with the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. And we call them expeditions, but we're not packing up wooden crates and going out for days. You know, we just go to these. We have an outing. Let's just call them outings, not expeditions. No one's going to die on them on purpose.
Yeah.
And so we go out, and we were. The one night we were at this area called Gray Station, which in the 70s was a high area of Bigfoot activity, and throughout the years has still kind of remained an active location. Years ago, one of my favorite sighting reports that happened in this area was a lady who was out jogging along the train tracks at Gray Station. That's why it's called Gray Station. It's an active train track. It's right next to the I think it's the Dorrance State Hospital, which is a mental facility. There's a soybean field. Then there's woods on the other side, a trailer park, but more woods on that. In the 70s, there was a Bigfoot sighting where Bigfoot had ripped the power box off the outside of a trailer.
Holy cow.
And that's a story that always stuck with me. But in the early 2000s, there was a lady who was out jogging, and she saw a Bigfoot pick up a deer, throw it over its shoulder, and run off with it, you know, into the woods. And because so many deer get hit by the trains in that area, you think about that, that's like an all-you-can-eat buffet. You know, that's dinner on demand. So why, if you're an opportunistic creature, would you not want to grab a quick meal there? Think about that. You could get all the food you need, all the sustenance, expending a very little bit of energy to do it. Makes perfect sense to me. So we were out there one night. It was raining really bad. It was myself, Billy Willard, my friend Matt, not Matt Arner, my other buddy Matt, and Phil Bracco is a Bigfooter from way back when. He still pops around from time to time. But we were out, and we had moved maybe 2 miles down from the other groups on the train track. So we were the furthest ones down. And it was dark, it was raining, and the fog starts rolling in across the soybean field, which is just creepy in itself. So Matt and I are facing the soybean field. There's the train track between us, and then on the other side is Billy and Phil. And Billy calls for my attention that he could see some eye shine in the woods. So I run up, and sure enough, you can see it, some eye shine in the woods. I had never seen that before. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And it blinked, like there was movement behind it. Like it wasn't just static in one spot. It wasn't a reflector. Starts raining again really bad. We decide to pack up. We start going down. And as we're leaving, a softball-sized rock gets lobbed between me and Billy. Misses my face probably about this much.
Cow.
And so that was the first experience I ever had with kind of rock throwing.
Okay.
That in itself. So keep in mind, I've been 8 years old. I'm probably 22, 23 at this point. So from the time of reading that book till now, you know, you do the math on that. It's like, what, 18 years, maybe, give or take. I'd never had anything happen.
So can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
The eye shine, was it, did you guys have any flashlights or anything that would have caused it? Or maybe moonlight or?
No, so it was not really moonlight because it was cloudy because of the rain coming in.
Oh, and you said it was foggy
you could
too.
just see the eyes, right? You could just see the eyes kind of illuminating, I guess, if you want to call it illuminating. I don't know what that is. That's the problem. I don't know what to call it because we have these reports, but we don't know what it's indicative of.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. That's what happens, the best kind. And so that was the first thing that's ever happened to me. And that was so many years ago. Then we had an incident with Tim Cassidy and myself. Tim Cassidy is another longtime research, and I'm doing the recall. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
He and I and Cindy Drageson, who's now passed away, her and her husband Dave were really influential researchers in Pennsylvania, and when I was just coming up into this, and his wife Cindy had gone out with us, and we had kind of stumbled upon this area which we thought might have been like a nesting area, and I had marked the area with Tootsie Roll wrappers because we weren't planning on staying there long.
Yeah.
And it's the only thing I had, and we had left. Well, a severe storm had come through, and the only reason why we knew we had come back to the right area, that's how drastic this was because it was torn up. Like, the only reason we knew was because of the Tootsie Roll wrappers we found on one of the markers that I had placed there. So as Tim and I are kind of surveying the area, all of a sudden, Tim is hit with this really overwhelming sense of euphoria, and I'm hit with this really awful sense of nausea. And all of a sudden, it sounds like a bulldozer starts plowing right through the woods. Well, my fight or flight mode kicked in, and I chased after it. So I'm chasing after something I can't see. Meanwhile, I've got Eric Altman yelling at me to stop chasing this because we don't know what it is.
Yeah, you're crazy.
And so I'm right. And so, but I wasn't thinking at the time fight or flight had kicked in, and I wanted to know what the hell this was. So at one point, we thought we had this thing surrounded and circled, but it managed to evade us. So we had walked out to one of the power line clearings, and we started heading back to the vehicles. And somebody had stopped and said they saw a humanoid-shaped figure in the tree line on the opposite side of the woods of the clearing, not far from where we thought we had chased it out or we had surrounded it. So there's a picture of that somewhere. And I told you I was going to try to find something groundbreaking for you. I'm trying to find that picture to send to you, Patrick, so you have it.
That would be so awesome. What was it a picture of?
It's a humanoid-shaped figure in the woods.
They got a picture of that?
They got a picture of that. I don't know what it is. I'm not making any claims.
Yeah. No.
All I know is when he took that photograph, he was convinced that that was what we chased out of the woods. He was convinced.
Oh, wow.
And so that I hadn't seen that picture maybe but a handful of times over the years. I had it saved on an old computer, and I can't find it anymore. Interesting enough, on that other old computer, Tim Cassie and I found this thing that looked like a big tooth. It looked like a big canine tooth.
Really?
And so, being naive as we are, we were showing it to a park ranger, and he goes, "Oh, that's a deer hoof core." I had never heard of a deer hoof core, and I had never seen one since. And so we gave it to him. We have pictures of it. I got to try to find them, and it looked like a big tooth. So funny story is, years later, Craig Woolheater is a good friend of mine. I call him Pops. He got us invited to Trapper's House from Mountain Monsters to watch the season premiere. So we went to Trapper's House in West Virginia. He invites us up. We ate all his cheese and drank his moonshine. But as we're going through his, going to his house, he goes, "I want to show you guys something." And he takes us to his room in this safe, and he opens the safe, and he pulls out and shows us this tooth, which looked exactly like what Tim and I had given that park ranger years before that. Same exact damn shape and size. And he said it's a tooth. He had it looked at. It was a tooth. So I felt incredibly dumb at that point in time, because immediately I hit with that memory of what we gave up.
Oh, no.
There are pictures of it. I got to find out. Unfortunately, Tim had a stroke a few years ago.
Oh, no.
And I don't know if he has any recall or if he has any pictures of it either. And so I want to try to find those. I want to try to find that picture so I could send them to you so you could see it, because they're remarkable.
Oh, man. Yeah, that does sound awesome.
Very remarkable photographs.
Wow. Well,
and then I had my sighting in 2012 when, you've probably heard this story a dozen times.
I have, but I want to hear it again.
And we had gone out with the express purpose of looking for Bigfoot in a very active part of Pennsylvania. And it was myself, my brother Ray, my buddy Dustin, Eric Altman, Ryan Cavaline, who filmed the movie Mountain Devils, and Dave Rupert. We all went out earlier than everybody else so we could get some game cameras set up. And Ray, myself, and Dustin were going to stay out there overnight because we wanted to get up early in the morning and see if we could do some early morning squatching. because that tended to be the time where the activity was happening based on, what we've heard. So those guys go out and do their thing. We're setting up our camp. We create a little fire, and we're sitting there shooting the breeze. And then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, Patrick, I see something run through our campsite. Dustin had also seen it. So he and I kind of jump up simultaneously, look at each other, and run to the tree line where we just saw this thing running. Now, it was starting to get dark, so you couldn't see too far into the tree line, but you could hear this thing still taking off, or you could still hear it going through the woods. Ray missed it all. And through this whole story, Ray missed almost everything. Like, I don't know if he just happened to be the unlucky man or what it was, but there was a good part of everything that Ray had missed. And so we're kind of jazzed, like, what the hell did we just experience? This was really cool. And I'll tell you, the thing that struck me was how fast it moved. And I got a glimpse of it, but it wasn't this big, hulky, bulky monster. It was, I liken it to this point that it moved like a big sloth. And it was so fast, Patrick. I have never seen anything move so fluidly and fast in my life. And I never saw the face of it. Never saw the face. Just the body of it move so quickly. And so, we kind of let it die down a little bit. We're like, well, we came out here to do some investigating. Let's go in and get bunked down for the night. We'll get up early. So we put the fire out, take the logs off the fire, go into the tent, lay down, and we're in there for a little bit. And then all of a sudden, we start hearing something walking through our campsite. Now, there's a difference between something bipedal and something quadrupedal walking through your campsite. You can tell the difference.
Yeah.
So at first, we didn't know if it was somebody messing with us or what was going on. And I'm just laying there, and I'm hearing it. Ray's asleep next to me on my right. Dustin's on my left. And I see this little cell phone light pop on, and I see Dustin looking at the time. And he's like, "You awake, Fork?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm awake." He goes, "You hear this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I hear it. I hear what's going on out there." So we hear it walking around. Then we're just lying there. And all of a sudden, on the outside of this tent, we see this orange glow starting. So Dustin's like, "What the hell?" He opens the tent, goes out. Something had taken the logs and put it back onto the fire. And the fire started rekindling itself. All right. So that's freaking me out. I go to get out, and Dustin goes, "Hey, throw me my gun." Well, me, the, epitome of gun safety. I literally throw him his gun. As I go to get out, he goes, "Forker, look." And right off to my left, there's that creature we saw earlier run up the hillside, this little hillside, and you can start hearing it take off like a bat out of hell around the perimeter of our campsite. Wow, was that something? So I'm freaked out. I run to the center of this meadow area. It's the only place in that meadow we get cell phone service, was right in the middle. And I called I tried to call Dave, couldn't get a hold of Dave. Tried to call Derek, couldn't get a hold of Eric. I called Dave's wife, Carrie, also a really good researcher, by the way. She just wasn't out with us that weekend. So I called Carrie. I said, "Carrie, I don't know if Dave's home yet, but can you try to get a hold of him and have him come back? Because we've got some shit going on. We don't want to be out here by ourselves." And obviously, you could ask Carrie to this day. She'll tell you I was worked up. And today I feel silly, I guess, for being worked up. But in the moment, it was the fear and the adrenaline. Like, what the hell is going on here? Because up to that time, I had thought, we've had some cool things happen, but nothing like this. And as much as we wanted to be out there, we never expected to experience anything. Like, it was never on the radar. Oh, you're going to have your own encounter. And this is a very active area, part of Pennsylvania, man. Still to this day, it's very active. So a little bit while longer, I see the flashlights of Dave and Ryan come back to the campsite. Ryan still may have our reactions on film because he was filming B-roll for his movie, and he thought this was a great opportunity to get some footage. And I know those guys enough to know it wasn't them playing pranks on us, right? Because they were in town. They had to drive back. The timing of it made a lot of sense. And so Dave's like, "Well, Sean, you guys wanted to be out here to get some experience. You got some experience. Come on, you can pull through. You can make it through the night." He goes, "We'll sit out here with you for a little while, and then if things don't act, we're going to take off." Okay. Dave could talk you into doing anything. That's just the kind of guy Dave is. He's a great guy. So we go back in the tent. They kind of bivouac out there in the brush. They're out there for a while. Nothing happens. Hey, they radio in, "We're leaving, guys. We'll come back in the morning." no, nothing to see here. Have a good night. They go. Probably about 45 minutes to an hour later, here we are in the tent. Here comes the footsteps again. And this time, I don't know if we all created Kool-Aid shape imprints in the tent or how we got out of that tent. But we got out of that tent, and we all three of us put our backs to one another and kind of standing there just trying to see what's going on around us, right? And all of a sudden, from behind one of the trees, you could see something peeking in and out from behind the tree at us. That really got me spooked. That put the hair on my arms to go up. And at no point did I ever feel like threatened. I just felt afraid. Like I never felt like this thing was going to kill us. But there were so many emotions going through my mind, I really didn't know how to feel. And neither did Dustin, and neither did Ray. So I said to him, why don't we try to charge at this thing? Well, that's not the first thing I said. The first thing I said is, Dustin, shoot it. Dustin would not shoot it. He couldn't get a good vision of it. He didn't want to be responsible for killing a person. Dustin's really responsible, former military, and I do credit him with being smarter than me in that situation, because who knows what could have happened. And so we all got the idea. I said, let's charge it. And they're like, okay. So we charged at it. And when we charged at it, it kind of took off. At one point, we threw a glow stick into the woods. And the weirdest thing happened, Patrick, is something picked up the glow stick.
Really?
And it picked it up and moved with it. And as we yelled at it, it threw the glow stick on the ground, and you could see the glow stick bounce, and it took off. Like, this thing moved so quick. Like, I've never seen anything move so fast in my life. And so we were done at that point. We didn't want to be out here anymore. So we waited a few more hours for it to, it started raining pretty good. We went back into the tent. There was this really strange flash of light we still can't explain to this day. It wasn't lightning because there was no thunder or anything else associated. It was just rain. At about 5:45, we got up. We threw everything into a Rubbermaid tote. I didn't collapse the tent or anything. We just picked everything up, threw it in there. And our fat asses hightailed it out of those woods to my van. And I called my wife. We stopped at a gas station on the way home. I said, I'm coming home. She goes, you weren't supposed to be home for a few days. I said, I don't want to talk about it. I'm just coming home. And I came home. I called Eric Altman. I said, Eric, I'm done with all this. I don't want to do this anymore. We had several ongoing experiences last night that made me really uncomfortable. And I just don't know if I want to do this anymore. And I think, Patrick, what got me is I still get emotional thinking about it because I didn't know how to react. And I think that really bothered me. Like, being an investigator and a researcher, you want to be at the top of your game and you want to know how to handle these situations. And that's the first time I ever had 100% complete empathy with a witness, is that you don't know what to do. And so anybody that says, grab your camera, you got time to get a picture, you don't. Because your mind's going at 1,000 miles a minute. And I'll tell you, the thing that really, really pisses me off is inside the tent, we had a Sony Handycam with night shot.
Yeah, no way.
That at no point did any of us think about grabbing and using. We didn't.
Well, you're not thinking about it.
No. All we thought about seriously was survival. And honestly, as I'm talking to this day, I still talk to Dustin and Ray about it. And I said to Dustin not long ago, do you think if the fire didn't start back up, we'd be so freaked out?
Really? You think that's what got you set off in the first place?
To me, I'm still caught up on that, man. Like, obviously, it had to have been watching us to know how to do this.
Yeah.
Like, something put the log back on the fire. I'm not saying it started the fire.
Yeah.
I'm saying I hope we were smart enough to put it out, but obviously heat can reignite, and it did that. And that freaked me out, man. Like, to me, that showed something a little bit more than a bear's not going to do that.
No. Yeah.
And so it freaked me out. And there were a lot of things about it. Like, I talk about it now, and like the emotional impact has lessened on me a bit. And I've really talked about it a lot more over the last few years. But you have to understand, after that happened, I didn't want to do this anymore. Like, I was perfectly happy walking away from it. Because the other worry, Patrick, I felt I had was, how am I going to be objective anymore after this? Like, now I had an experience. Am I going to be able to tell somebody else that they didn't? Like, but then what I've learned is just for some reason, there's like this connection that you develop with somebody that's really experienced something. Like you can almost tell there's like an unseen bond between somebody that's had an experience with something and somebody that's bullshitting you. And I don't know. So I think it's helped in a little bit, but I try not to minimize. And when people talk about the emotional repercussions they have from these sightings, they're not kidding.
Oh, yeah.
It is life-changing. It's traumatic because these aren't supposed to exist. Our whole lives, we're told they don't exist. Today, we're still told they're a fairy tale. What I saw wasn't a fairy tale. It was very real, and it messed me up for a while, man. It really did.
Yeah. Well, and I totally get everything you're saying. And one of the things that really touches me is when you said, "Hey, we had a night vision camera in the tent, and we didn't even think about it." Well, when I had my experience, everybody was like, "Well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you take your phone?" I thought I was going to die. You know?
Right. Why don't you try it?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, you just don't think in the heat of the moment. You're not thinking about that. You know, and that's another kind of crazy thing when you're going out and doing these investigations and you're looking. You honestly don't think something is going to happen. So
no, you don't. At least I don't.
Yeah.
And I told you, of all the time I've spent out there, on one hand, I can count all the experiences I had that I can't even chalk up to all being Bigfoot experiences. You know, even my sighting, I would like to think that's what it was, but you know, who really knows? We don't know until one's put on a table somewhere. We don't know what it is. But it was traumatic. And, you know, I think my wife is not somebody that ever really had a lot of interest in it. But when she saw my reaction to what I experienced that weekend, I think it made it more real for her and more real for a lot of my, friends and family that always, kind of took it for tongue in cheek. This is what I do.
Yeah.
But when they saw that experience that it had on me and how it changed, it wasn't funny anymore. There was no ha-ha about it. It was like, wow, this guy experienced something real. And, obviously it was impactful. Yeah. And, to Ray and Dustin, like we did one episode about it. We've not come out publicly and talked about it very often at all. And I always like to do that. I always like people to talk to us because we haven't really sat down and talked about each other's perspectives about it very often either. It's almost like you had a weird encounter on the mountain. Nobody wants to talk about it. Kind of like, what's the guy's name? Travis Walton, Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about that stuff. Like they just don't.
Yeah.
Weird.
So one thing, and I'm going to get off the Bigfoot topic a little bit now, because one thing I do know, you really enjoy going to the Mothman festivals. So when we were talking about cryptids earlier, do you believe in Mothman?
No, I don't. I like the story around it. I like the ambiance. I like the passion around it.
Okay.
And it's just a cool place to be.
Yeah.
What those folks saw, I think they saw something. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been a big owl. And, You don't
think it was a bat squatch?
No.
Okay.
What I do think is that they did imbibe in some adult activities that kind of,
that happens.
And that happened. I mean, I think that's been proven for the record, but it's an eerie place. And I've been there. I love it. I keep telling my wife I want to retire to Point Pleasant because it's got a great atmosphere. It's a lovely little town. And the culture there is really neat. I just love how engaged and geared up they are around it. And it's their thing. It's whether I believe in it or not, it's irrelevant. They just treat it with respect. They have a good time with it. And it's the only thing this little town has.
Yeah, it's cool. I wasn't trying to put you on the point or make anybody upset with you. I was just curious because...
I've been pretty clear about it, that I always think that it's been a great story.
Yeah.
But the bridge collapsed, right? And that's tragic in itself. And, rather there was a supernatural, it's not the first time we've heard of harbingers. And, then you relate that to these things that are being seen in Chicago and around the world now, these flying humanoids.
Yeah.
Maybe there was something to it. I don't know. To me, the story it's a great story I just don't know.
Yeah.
Again,
Well,
but I love it.
Yeah.
I have a blast when I'm there.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like a blast. One year, I want to go and check it out. One of these
You
days.
gotta come. You gotta come.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I do myself, Jeff Thomas, my good friend Jeffrey R. Thomas, and James Baker. Jeff got us the gig of playing the Men in Black on the hayride every year.
I'm gonna say, I saw you dressed up last year on Facebook. It was awesome.
It's hot. It's a hot job, but somebody's got to do it. It's a lot of fun. We do, yeah. we get that a lot too. We can sing and dance too. That's the fun part.
All right.
We just have a good time.
Well,
And
if you
know,
sing
it's
and dance,
really,
I'm definitely coming.
oh yeah, I got to tell them we got to put together every year. We try to add more to it.
That's fun.
You know,
that's fun.
And we have a blast, man. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that town has something to keep it around. And honestly, everywhere, crypto tourism is cool. Whether the stories are real or not, it gets people interested. It helps local economies. It helps jobs. That's never a bad thing.
And it's fun.
Never. It is fun, right?
Yeah.
We're allowed to have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people forget that.
I know.
This world's serious enough without having fun.
Exactly. But one more cryptid I want to ask you about that's high up on my list. I just don't know about it. I mean, I myself believe something's going on. I don't know what it is. I've had people tell me encounters, and they seem so sincere that I just don't know. And I've heard encounters being told on other podcasts, but it's the dog man.
Right.
The dog man. I mean, do you think
people are going to say, why did you have him on your show? I think dog men sightings are misidentified Bigfoot.
A lot of times I do too.
I do. I think some of the physical manifestations of this, the characteristics of the dogman don't make sense. There are apes that have protruding muscles, right? I just think that they're a different subset of Bigfoot.
What is it?
The mind's a funny thing.
Dog leg?
Right. The mind, the feet are what gets me.
Yeah.
You know, like the hawk, the bent bent leg, and like that gets me. And what I think, the mind's a crazy thing, and people are very susceptible to the power of suggestion. And if you don't have Bigfoot in your vernacular, and you see something large and hairy, what are you probably going to think it is? Wolfman.
Well, yeah, werewolf.
Or bear, right? A werewolf. And most everybody that's seen a horror movie is probably going to think, "Oh my God, I just saw a werewolf." And so I think they're misidentified Bigfoot. I could be wrong. I say that a lot. There's a lot of stories out there that I think people have taken a lot of creative liberty with and made more out of them than they are.
Yeah.
But I wasn't there to experience it. And I'll tell you, again, for people that love the subject, they're hell of a good stories. They are exciting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I trust me. I love getting them. So,
but the evidence is weak.
Yeah.
The evidence is weak.
It's very, very weak. It's not like the Bigfoot evidence. So,
no.
And back to the Bigfoot subject, do you give any credence to the different types? Because you talked about misidentified dogmen as being Bigfoot, but they also, a lot of people talk about different types of Bigfoot.
Right.
Do you give any credence to that?
I do, because I think different regions may have something built differently for its environment. Like in the southeast down in Florida, you have the skunk ape, right? Which is a smaller creature, longer hair, more vocal and more violent than its northeastern counterpart. That, it lives in a much different environment. It lives in very dangerous swamps where there's a lot more things down there that can kill you in terms of animals, let alone people. Northeast, it tends to be a little bit more solidly built for the winters. Out in the Pacific Northwest, you have sometimes these very massively built Bigfoots that are seen, right? That, the big classic Sasquatch, the Northern California into the Pacific Northwest into Canada, that are built because it gets colder and the, environment is a lot more You need to be a lot sturdier to survive out that way. So I think is it different species? I don't know if it's more species or adaptation to the environments that they're made to survive in. Even in like Oklahoma in the Midwest, they're not as physically built up as they are in the Pacific Northwest, right? You still have that kind of Fouke, Arkansas,
aggressive,
like Boggy Creek type of creature, right?
Yeah, that's the area I'm in. That's why I don't.
Yeah, that's your backyard.
I don't want to go in the woods alone.
It always travels the creeks, man.
Yeah, I know the creeks and rivers. That's what gets me. Oh crap, Sean! It has been so much fun talking to you tonight. I'm gonna let you get off the hook and go enjoy your evening with your wife. And before I get off of here, one thing, my wife wants me to say hi to you. She says, I always like all his stuff on Facebook. Say hi to him.
Hi, dear. She does. She's a great lady. Yeah, I'm always happy to see you guys have become great friends. You know, even though we're not personally really closely acquainted, you know, you've checked in on me when I was going through some tough times lately, and I appreciate that, man. And your understanding about getting me on the show, and that's what it's about. Man. There is community in this community.
There is. And I'm going to tell everybody out there, you were the biggest help when I was getting this started.
Thank you.
Anytime I had a question, man, you were right there. So,
well, you know, I like to tell everybody I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I am a wide variety. So I'm pretty approachable. If people need anything, feel free to reach out to me. I'll listen to your story. And if I can't, I'll get you pointed in the right direction to somebody who will.
Yeah.
I just love the subject, man. I love the subject. I love more people coming into it that are doing what you're doing, that want to be a part of it, that want to help tell a good story. And that's why I do it. It's a lot of fun. To me, it beats bowling. Not there's anything wrong with bowling, but it beats bowling for me.
Heck yeah. So is there anything you want to promote? I mean, go ahead and promote your podcast. Everybody.
Well, folks want to tune in. We're usually every other Monday night. So we're going to be back on the 17th. We're going to have Steve Coles on the show to talk about his upcoming book. And then we go every other week. But that might change again soon. We might go back to weekly, depending if we start running into burnout too. You know, there's so much to talk about, but sometimes you just talk too much about it. So we like to meter ourselves. But I've also been going back to the archives, throwing out old shows and cleaning them up and reposting them for folks that may not have ever heard them.
I listened to one of them today.
I'm glad you did. That's awesome.
Yeah, I usually catch you on the replay on Podcast Player. So
yeah, we're on every platform: Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. We're even on YouTube. We're trying to grow the YouTube channel, but it's not a major plus for us. Again, I tell folks the only reason why we do the podcast is to kind of help pay for our trips of we do throughout the year. You know, none of us are really independently wealthy. We all do okay for ourselves, but you know, this hobby gets expensive.
Yeah.
You know, this equipment gets expensive, and my wife gets tired of me charging it to my Amex card. So
I understand. I'm in the same boat, but I'm just starting with the expenses. So I got a ways to catch up to you.
It builds. I mean, you can't really see it in here, but I have a whole, you know, my studio.
Oh yeah.
You know,
you got me beat by 10 miles.
Yeah, this is my studio, my office outside from my house. I don't like to, you know, work in the same place I live. I like to keep them separate. So this is an old pajama factory that they've converted into studios. It's a great place. It's called the Pajama Factory. And I'll tell you, we could do a whole show on this place one day.
Yeah.
It's pretty unique.
Very cool. Well, Sean, thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on the show.
Always my pleasure.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And
I had fun.
Oh, yeah. No, I knew I was going to have fun. I was nervous at the beginning, but I'm having fun now. But
no reason to be nervous.
I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Me and my buddy Dirty over there say thank you. Dirty's over there. Friend. Yeah, that's my producer.
Bye, Dirty.
Bye. He said
There's
bye, Dirty. All right, everybody out there in Cryptid Land.
Keep it creepy.
Yeah, out in the woods where the shadows creep. I'm trying to find a legend that the people keep. Bigfoot's the name, got a story to tell. Footprints in the mud, can't you hear the bell? Whispers in the night, can you feel that chill? Bigfoot on the run, he's a legend, keep it real. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride. Like I'm on a quest, searching for the homie, you know he's the best. Got my camera ready, heightened senses on blast. Snap a shot of Sasquatch, legend unsurpassed. Eyes in the dark, you can't catch what you can't see. King of the woods, living wild and free. Bigfoot, yeah, he's the talk of the town. Creeping through the trees, never wearing a frown. Legend of the forest, he's got a big stride. As the trap beats thump, you know he's got pride.